Welcome to the Connection Matters podcast. I'm your host, Leona Johnson. In this podcast, we explore the intricate weave of consciousness, empowerment, connection to the sacred, and cultural emergence. I believe that now, more than ever, we're being called to craft a new story, one of community, deep listening, creative potential, cultural repair, and an embodied understanding of the interconnected web of all things. Let's do the work together so that we can move forwards with authenticity and integrity, knowing that we're contributing to a healthy, regenerative culture for future generations. My mission with this podcast is to inspire and empower you to step into this vision for life. Each episode, I'll bring you thought-provoking conversations with leading voices in the field, but you'll also find solo episodes where I dive deep into my passion, connected self-leadership and everyday spirituality, giving you actionable tools to integrate into your daily life. Subscribe now on your favourite podcast platform if you haven't already, and if you enjoy the show, please share it with those who would appreciate it. It really helps when you do. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help others find us who might need that dose of hope and inspiration. Finally, to get notified straight into your inbox, feel free to sign up to the mailing list in the show notes below. This is also where I share weekly inspirational thoughts and any downloadable freebies that I talk about during the episode. My aim is to serve. I am so grateful that you are here. Hey, beautiful human, and welcome back to Connection Matters podcast. Today, I want to speak into something that's been landing quite clearly for me as we've headed into this new year over the last couple of weeks. It's not about new intentions or about visioning. We've done that. It's not even about planning the next big thing. It's actually about consolidation. Consolidation. I love this word. And I want to say it again because it doesn't get much airtime in a culture that's obsessed with growth and expansion and movement. Consolidation. So here's what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to talk about what consolidation actually means in this context. Literally what the word means, because I've been sitting with it and I think it offers us something really important. And I'm going to share my own journey of the last year and how I've only just realised the power of what I've been living. And I'll talk about why ending well really matters more than we think, and how the world we're living in right now asks something different from us. And I'm going to offer you some really practical questions and reflections for these early months of the year in relation to this. So all of this might feel a bit counter to where you're hearing what you're hearing everywhere else, but I think it's what many of us need right now. So let's start with the word itself. Consolidation literally means to make something solid, to strengthen it, to combine separate things into a unified whole. It's not about adding more. It's about integrating what's already here. In soil science, consolidation is when particles settle and compress, creating stability and structure. In medicine, it's when memories move from short-term to long-term storage, when learning becomes part of you. And in life, it's when we stop scattering ourselves and actually let things land. It's staying, strengthening, holding, finishing, learning to say no again and again so that something deeper can actually take root. And right now, I'm only just realising how powerful this has been for me and how necessary it's been actually. And honestly, how rare it is that we actually give ourselves permission to do it. I want to share something personal here because it's shaped how I'm understanding this moment. As many of you know, if you've been listening for a while, last year brought some big unexpected shifts for me. I let go of one of the big projects that I was most proud of in my life. I went through a painful breakup. I experienced one of the most significant health challenges I've ever faced, followed by major surgery. And for a long time, I was labelling last year as, my most difficult year. But something shifted for me very recently, like really big, as I've been spending more time walking and sitting in stillness. And I realised that the genuinely difficult things happened in the first 6 months of last year. And the second 6 months were something else entirely. They weren't dramatic. They weren't particularly visible. They wouldn't have looked impressive on social media. They were about me relearning who I was after shedding so much. And I'd lost skins and identities, versions of me, ways of working, ways of being in relationship. And what I needed at that point wasn't expansion. I needed safety, ground, time, consistency. And I was fiercely protecting my nervous system and my sense of home, although I wasn't necessarily aware that that's what I was doing. But I was doing a lot of the right things, to resource myself. And I was still leading beautiful work, including nature quests and retreats, which fed me and reminded me that I was on the right path. But outside of my work, I was pretty tender for quite a long time, and I really wasn't ready to leap. I wasn't ready to build anything new. I was learning how to inhabit my life again. And here's the thing. I am someone who's used to peak experiences, who thrives on them. Ceremony, ritual, gatherings, deep transformative moments. That's my normal. But I intentionally didn't build in so many last year. And in a way that was really hard, because there were loads of times where I felt vulnerable and sad and wounded and alone, even when on the outside everything looked fine. But I had, to hold that space for myself, to do something differently so that I didn't just keep repeating the same patterns. And I guess underneath, I had the knowledge that if I did that, this kind of quiet confidence that I just had to stay with it and see it through. And even though it felt like it was taking a really long time for me to heal, I knew I was consolidating all that I knew now and that I would emerge. From the outside, I don't know how it looked. Maybe it looked like nothing much was happening, but inside something very important was taking place for me. The fancy word for it is integration. My new word for it is consolidation. Learning how to live differently. Not just to understand something differently, but to actually embody a different way of being. So by the end of the year, I was ready to move on, longing to move on, and determined to do it well and in a healthy way, using all of the skills that I know how to do, all the ways that I coach others in doing. And the power of ending well. And this is where something really important happened. And I'm only seeing the full significance of it now. At the end of last year, I made a conscious choice to end it well. We don't talk about endings enough in our culture, but we tend to rush them, we minimise them, or we move on quickly because endings are uncomfortable and because there's always something new to be started. But incomplete endings drain our energy. They leave loops open. They keep parts of us tethered to what has already passed. So I marked solstice intentionally. I met with my two closest friends intentionally. I held the women's circle that I recently set up in a way that was intended to hold and nourish me. I did personal ceremony on the land, and I allowed myself to be witnessed as I told my story in different ways to different people over the whole of Christmas and New Year. And even as this year began, I kept seeing more and more ways that I could find beauty in the completion of things. It has become quite an awareness for me, a mission, to end open projects and plans and anything that has been potentially energy sapping, any commitments that I either didn't want to do or wasn't being clear about. And I've spent time intentionally closing those loops, finishing things that have been sat there for ages, and really reviewing what still needed tending before starting anything new. And I stopped adding new lists. Instead, I have focused on maintaining what already matters. My children, my friendships, my existing clients, my inner compass. And one of the most powerful endings that I experienced recently was completing the year-long leadership course that I ran last year from February until January this year. And on the final day, we sat together in the yurt for hours. We didn't rush. We journeyed through the qualities and the lessons that had been learnt and re-embodied them so that they could be taken together with us. We sang, we celebrated, we nurtured each other, and we witnessed each other. And for me, it was really beautiful to acknowledge what had been created. And I just stayed in that this week after that session. There was no rushing to the next thing or planning the next course to maximise on the momentum and the flow. I've just experienced and enjoyed the good ending. And that is big for me. It would normally be my pattern to finish something with one energy and immediately pivot to what's next. I'm quite fast. I'm a fast processor in lots of ways. And this time I was determined not to do this. I let the ending be complete. And because of that, something big has really shifted. It's not dramatic. It wasn't overnight, but steadily what I am realising, and this is what I'm seeing now in January as I move into this year, the intentional slowness that I chose, that tender second half of last year, enabled me to see the power of consolidation, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. And the good endings that I created at the close of the year set me up to actually begin well, not with a long list of resolutions, not with pressure or urgency, but with strength, real strength, not driven by adrenaline, not performing, that kind of performing energy that I don't actually have. It's the kind of strength that comes from being rooted and not rushed. And as January's unfolded, I've been working on emptying my inbox and observing patterns and clearing space. And I've had to say no to loads of things this week, which again is hard because I like collaborations and joining and getting involved. But getting involved in interesting things. But I guess I'm holding a boundary in a way that I haven't before because I know what happens when I don't. I fragment, I dilute what it is that I'm trying to do, and I lose the thread, and instead I end up feeling behind always, and I feel steady instead. So there's a sense of trust in me, but I'm sensing this in others too. Is that where you're at? I'm really interested. It's like this commitment to not pushing and to maintaining what you already have, so that when the next things come in, you're actually ready. I mean, how is that as a vision for life? I think it feels different, like personally and in the field. So this is what consolidation makes possible. And here's why I think this matters now, beyond just my personal story, because we're living in really uncertain times, aren't we? Shifting times. Many of us can feel that, even if we're not always watching the news or naming it out loud. There is a sense of massive instability in the wider world and in systems that we once relied on and trusted, in the pace of change, in the stories that we've been told about how life is supposed to work. And for those of us who are sensitive and awake, relational beings, this doesn't just stay out there. It lands in our bodies, our nervous systems, and our relationships and our choices. And I believe that in times like these, consolidation is not a retreat. It's a form of leadership. It's a deliberate choice to stop scattering ourselves and to stop responding to every urgent thing and to stop fragmenting our energy across too many things too soon. In uncertain times, strong roots really matter more than fast growth. This is not about shrinking your life. It's about inhabiting it now as it is fully. It's about building the kind of inner and outer capacity to respond wisely rather than reactively. What I see happening every year is that people react and push. And January arrives with that strange kind of energy, doesn't it? There's the relief that December is over. There's the quiet hope that this year might feel different. And even if you don't consciously set resolutions, there's often an unspoken expectation that you'll feel clearer and more organised and more motivated by now. But January is still winter. The light is low. The body is recalibrating. The nervous system is coming out of the intensity of the holidays. And people start the year with good intentions, and then somewhere between mid-January and early February, a familiar feeling creeps in. Not panic, not collapse, just a low-grade fatigue, February fatigue, a sense of pressure behind the eyes, a wondering that they don't quite want to follow all the way through. And I thought that thought of, I thought this year would feel different, but if you feel like that, it's not failure. It's what happens when we ignore the season that we're actually in. And when we try to move at a pace that doesn't match the reality of our bodies and our lives and our nervous systems. So, I identified 3 patterns that I see that keep people stuck. The first is doing too much too soon. After a pause or a holiday, people come back with a long list. They want to address work and health and relationships and purpose and finance and creativity, and all at once. And there's no sequencing and no containment, just pressure. The second pattern is kind of treating January like a test, as if it's how you show up in the first weeks determines the success or the failure of the entire year. And that can create quite a brittle relationship with yourself, where compassion is replaced by constant self-assessment. But the third pattern is trying to do it all alone, holding everything in your own head, trying to motivate yourself, trying to stay aligned without the mirrors and the witnesses or the support. And these patterns that they're so common that they feel normal, but they're also what prevents consolidation from happening. What consolidation requires is discipline, but not that kind of harsh kind of discipline. It requires the discipline of attunement and attention, and of noticing when we're being pulled towards distraction, and of recognizing when something new is actually a way of avoiding the discomfort of staying with what's already here. And it's subtle, because distraction doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like opportunity. Sometimes it looks like inspiration. Sometimes it looks like a good idea. But consolidation asks, is this necessary right now? Is this aligned with what I'm already tending? And will this deepen or dilute my life? Saying no over and over is not easy, especially for those of us who are creative and responsive and open to possibility. But it's how we create the conditions for meaningful yeses later on. It's how we build the kind of strength that can actually hold what we're being called towards. Every no is also a yes to depth, a yes to integrity, a yes to what we're already responsible for. So what does this look like in practice? Not as a rigid plan, but as a way of relating to yourself during these early months. First, I want you to choose fewer things to focus on. Early in a cycle is not the time for a long list. It's a time for discernment. You might ask yourself, what genuinely matters in the next 8 weeks? Often it's not a goal, it's a quality, like stability or presence or simplicity or connection. When I ask this question for myself right now, what comes is completion, finishing what's begun, clearing what's accumulated, creating spaciousness. That's not exciting. It's not Instagram worthy, but it's what's needed. Second, build rhythm before ambition. Before adding anything new, ask what supports my nervous system. Regular meals, consistent sleep, daily time outside, protected mornings, fewer commitments. These are not indulgences, they are foundations. One small but powerful commitment I made this January was to go outside every day. I said it in a previous podcast. And one was to move my body every day with either yoga or dance. And I've kept that commitment. And the difference is massive. My mood is steadier, my energy feels cleaner, I feel more in sync with the season rather than fighting it. And it's amazing. Well, the third thing that I would suggest would be to make the next phase visible now. So instead of waiting for February to overwhelm you, bring it into view, look at your calendar for the next 8 weeks and notice where the pressure points are. Notice what you're already committed to and notice what might need to shift. This isn't about controlling everything. It's about being in relationship with your time and energy rather than being ambushed by it. Questions that might be worth sitting with are where might you be being called to consolidate rather than expand? Where might staying be more courageous than moving on? What are you maintaining that could be completed or released? What would it mean to tend fewer things more deeply? And what are you afraid will happen if you stop expanding? These aren't necessarily comfortable questions, but they're important ones. Consolidation is not inaction, and I want to be really clear about that. Consolidation is is not doing nothing. It's doing what's already here really well. It's tending, maintaining, strengthening. It's ensuring that relationships are nourished and that commitments are honoured and that systems are sustainable. It's much less glamorous than starting something new, but it's what allows growth to be real rather than performative, and it's what leads to less overwhelm and that feeling of never being enough and never getting there. And in times of uncertainty, this is not small work, it's essential. It's how we build resilience, and it's how we strengthen relationships, and it's how we tend community. It's how we stay connected to the more than human world. And this is leadership. Not the loud kind, not the visible kind, the kind that creates conditions for others to flourish because you're not draining yourself or trying to hold everything together. So, I want to ask you something honestly. If nothing changes structurally this year, if you keep rushing endings, if you keep pushing beginnings before one thing is ended, if you keep scattering your energy across too many things, what's likely to repeat? Not because you're doing it wrong, but because the conditions haven't changed. And what might become possible if you choose differently this time? Most people reach for support when they're already depleted. But the most transformative support is when it's chosen before crisis, when things are still tender, when listening is still possible, when small shifts can prevent big collapses later. Support is not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that you're taking your life seriously. We're not meant to consolidate alone. We need containers, we need mirrors, we need rhythms that hold us steady when distraction pulls. This way of working, this relational, seasonal, supported, oriented around what genuinely matters, is at the heart of everything I offer. For those who are interested, the Life Compass curriculum is designed specifically for this kind of deep consolidation work, not fixing yourself, not pushing towards an ideal future, but orienting your life around what genuinely matters. And this is, through doing this, how I've learned to live and work. And I know some of you are looking for a different way. And whether or not you ever join anything, I just want you to hear this clearly. You don't need to earn your way into a good year. You don't need to rush to prove anything, and you don't need to carry it all by yourself. Consolidation is wise. Ending well matters. Strong roots create resilient lives. January and February can be months that hold you if you let them. So thank you for listening, and take good care of yourself. Thanks for tuning in to Connection Matters podcast. I hope today's episode inspired and empowered you to deepen your connection to yourself, others, and the world around you. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to subscribe, share it with those who might benefit, and leave a review. It really helps others to discover the podcast. You can also join our mailing list to stay updated with new episodes, inspiring thoughts, and free resources designed to support your journey. Together, we can build a more connected, compassionate world, one conversation at a time. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep creating the future that you want to live in. Go well, beautiful human.